Justine Triet and Martin Scorsese. Unbelievable. You guys are going to have a blast. Please allow me to thank our sponsors, The Hollywood Reporter, our presenting sponsor, the Manitou Fund, and I love to thank the board of directors of the film festival. Thank you to all of them. As I said, you are going to have a blast tonight. I mean, any evening that includes one of the greatest international directors nominated for the Oscar, Justine Triet, and 81-year-old legend who's at the top of his game, Martin Scorsese. It's going to be a great evening. Please welcome the Hollywood Reporter's executive editor and host of its Awards Chatter podcast, a dear friend of the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. Please give a warm welcome to Scott Feinberg. Hug it out.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I love this film festival. I've been coming since 2009, moderating since 2012. We have had some very special evenings that I've been fortunate enough, thanks to Roger, for the opportunity to moderate people like Daniel Day-Lewis, Cate Blanchett, and Spike Lee. But I will say that tonight's evening is as special as any of them. We have with us, as Roger alluded to, two great filmmakers. One who has had a breakthrough year that makes clear to everyone that she is a great filmmaker and will be with us making great films for a long time to come. And another who reminded us this year of why he has been regarded as a great filmmaker for more than a half century. We are gonna spend some time with each of them, and beginning with our first honoree, a French woman who, for her fourth narrative feature, Anatomy of a Fall, became only the third female ever to win the Cannes Film Festival's Palme d'Or, their highest honor. Last month, she also received 2 Oscar nominations for Best Original Screenplay and for Best Director. She's only the 8th woman ever nominated for the latter and the first from France. And her film is nominated for the Best Picture Academy Award. Let's take a look now at a scene from Anatomy of a Fall directed by Justine Triet.
I'm going to help out.
Justine is joined by Fred Cassidy, who will be helping us out. Welcome, and congratulations. A very big year and last few weeks. And I mentioned this is your 4th narrative feature. You'd made documentaries as well, and we can talk about all of that, but I want to begin. I think the story of this film, Anatomy of a Fall, in a way begins with your prior film, Sybil. How did you first meet the star of this film, Sandra Hüller, who is nominated, I will add, for the Best Actress Academy Award?
Comment est-ce que tu as rencontré Sandra?
Yes.
Et donc c'était des étincelles pour faire le film.
Yes, I think I met Sandra 12 years ago. She gave me my first prize for a short movie in La Berlinale in Berlin. And after, she was German, you know. I'm French, so it was not so easy to find, you know, a project. And I watched Tony Erdmann, and I was so impressed by her. And for me, she was not playing, she was living, really. And after that, I proposed her a small part for Sybil. And she was so, she was so special. She was very shy in the real life, and on set she was in fire. And I was like, okay, I want to write something for this woman and something bigger. And after we started to write the movie with Arthur Harari, my co-life partner, I don't know how. And after that, yes, we were thinking about this woman and how we can, yes, dive in this complex woman. And she gave me the inspiration, of course, to spend 2 hour and a half without, yeah, I don't know. She's a mystery in a way, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned your partner, Arthur Harari. You wrote Sybil with him, and now Anatomy of a Fall after. What's it like? What's it like working with your significant other? And he is still unlike it's we won't assume it's autobiographical because he's still with us, right?
He's alive. He's okay. Yeah. No, it's okay. We have a normal life. But yes, working with your husband could be dangerous in a way. in the pandemic time, yes. Of course.
Right.
Because we started in, this moment. But the question was? Sorry?
No, just working with him. But as you say, during the pandemic, this idea came out of that time. And I wonder also, you've said elsewhere that a number of films, some of them going back to the 50s, some of them, just a few years ago, were inspirations for Anatomy of a Fall. One of them has a title that's almost exactly the same. But can you tell us what were some of the other movies that were percolating in your mind as you guys wrote this?
Yes. When we started the writing process, I didn't watch all the courtroom movie because, it's my obsessions are always watch very beautiful movies, very masterpieces, and sometimes very not good crime stories. So it's a mix, between this. But of course, Anatomy of a Murder was in my mind since 10 years ago. And I think it made me confident, yes, because I was like, okay, when you come inside the courtroom, for me it's like a match, it's a game, and you cannot drop the game. And it was a huge point to convince my producer to not be too anxious about the length of the movie, because they're always like, oh, it's, at that moment when we wrote the movie, in France, everybody was like, okay, cinema is dead, so now, I don't know, make a series, but it's dead. So I was like, okay, maybe I just do my last movie, and after I will make a series to win money. But yes, everybody was very anxious and about the length and about everything. And Anatomy of a Murder was really something pour prendre les gens, yes. And after, I think the Boston Stranglers was really important for me, from Richard Fleischer. I watched, I think, 40 times before shooting. I'm not obsessed by crime of old women. It's just for me, he's really a genius, and I don't know why he's not quite famous as Hitchcock. I don't understand. I love so much Hitchcock, but for me, Richard Fleischer is really, I don't understand. Okay, for the grand public,
For the public at
he's
large.
not so famous. And yes, and there is another crime story with Amanda Knox, the story in Peru of an American woman. Yes, it was very, very important for me when we wrote the script. Yes.
So I know it's a lot of right up through Marriage Story. Just a few years ago, the Noah Baumbach movie, you said this is sort of even in conversation with the argument they have there, the gender dynamics, which I think what you've said, if I understand correctly, like the idea, a lot of the motivation for Anatomy of a Fall is all right, we have a woman who is confident, maybe even a little cocky. She is professionally more successful than her significant other. She, is sexually confident. All these things that usually we see that in movies as the guy, and you wanted to see what happens, how the audience reacts, where the sympathies go if we flip that, right?
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to give these words for a woman, and it's not so often. And in the argument scene, it was, of course, the point. And I think all the core of the movie is the reciprocity between women and men, and how we can live together, and how we can build something without put
someone down.
Yeah, it's not so easy, and yes.
Yeah, and the other thing here is language, right? There's the language of the courtroom that. The language at home, there is, in fact, the secret recording that comes to light in this film, which is pretty interesting. Just sort of, if you would talk a little bit about, that scene in particular, the secret recording, you've said a lot of takes, a lot of work went into that one. You also had a secret recording in Sybil. So I wonder, what's the... Anything you want to share about secret recordings as well?
No, I have to admit something tonight. When I was younger, I have that bad habit to record, yes, a lot of things. But now, no, it's finished.
Let's see your pockets. Are you sure?
But sometimes when I was lost with my white page before writing something, I just went to a party and I just record a lot of discussion. And after I was but no, now it's finished. It's done. No, I could not do this. No, sometimes it's useful when you just yeah. It's great to have some footage, to just.
The honesty comes out, the truth. Yes.
I come from documentaries. So.
Yes, right. So I'm sure that I would imagine that your actress and probably everybody else who worked on this film was curious, like everybody who sees the film, about what's the truth of what happened here? And have you shared that with Sandra Hüller or anyone else?
I think I shared this with one person, but not Sandra, no. I think I will speak in 10 years.
You'll get it.
It's an excuse for you to invite me in 10 years.
Keep going, right.
So you are forced to do it in 10 years. No, I'm sorry, I cannot do this now. Tonight.
Fair enough. Oh, I thought tonight, you might want to unburden yourself, but all right. The other great mystery of this movie is where you found this breakout star of the film, Snoop, who today, this is the border collie who was the surprise star at the Oscar nominees luncheon that took place earlier today. I personally saw him taking pictures with Ryan Gosling, with Mark Ronson. This is the only person other than you who I guess knows what really happened in this crime.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous.
Yeah, right. So he, and then more seriously, the young boy who plays the son, the partially blind son in the film. Where did you find him?
It's two different stories.
Yes. not the same vet.
Yes. Now, I have to admit, now, the dog is really, really amazing. But I have to admit something tonight, another thing. He has one problem, The person, Laura, his trainer, is really wonderful. And she's just said to me, he's wonderful. He has a lot of energy. He's the best. But he cannot walk slowly like this, And when I wrote the script, there was a lot of shots, inspired by White Dog. Just you are behind the dog and he's just come inside a room like this and you're just behind. It's so beautiful. And it's not possible with Snoop. He was so fast. And I was like, okay, I have the Steadicam boy and everything. And it was like, okay, we cannot do anything with this. So I said, maybe if he's tired after it's okay. And she said, no, when he's tired, it's just stop. And I was like, okay, this is the only problem with the Border Collier. But no, he's fantastic, of course. And he worked a lot before, you know, Laura trained him during, I don't know, 6 months to do the dead dog, you know, all the things. It was really crazy. Yeah.
And the young man, did he have longer hours on set?
Yeah, it's totally different. Yeah, Milo is really, I love him so much. He has no cell phone. You know, he's 15. He has no cell phone. He's totally different. He's really, you know, aware, really in life. He's really interesting. And he learned to play piano just before the 2 months before, and he's really, really crazy. Not crazy. Sorry, he's
Intelligent.
Sorry, jet lag.
Okay. Well, let's talk about this film back in France. First, to win the highest honor at the Cannes Film Festivals, for a French filmmaker especially, has got to be very special. Then it comes out, and
Thank you.
a big hit at the at the box office in France as well. And then, though, you know, I guess you don't know what happens. Sometimes movies that are great don't always translate around the world, but in this case, you guys, Neon, it got out to the world, and we'll note 2 Golden Globes, Best Screenplay and Best Non-English Language Film, nominated at the BAFTAs for Best Film, Best Director, all kinds of stuff, and then the Oscars. And this doesn't happen very often for films not in the English language, and so what have you made of the response, first at home, but then abroad? It's pretty incredible.
Comment est-ce que la réponse du public, le fait que ça soit accueilli partout?
I think, you know, it's really, really interesting because people are speaking a lot of their life to me, you know. And they are like, okay, it's my life. I have the feeling that you put mic in my living room. So, you know, I think, yes, it touched some, in a way, in the intimacy of people, you know, and we could not expect this when we were writing this. So it's really moving. It's really moving for me, of course, because when we were in the cast and for everything, in the financial people in France were a little stressful, you know. Take a German actress to speak in French and in English. They were like, oh, wow. You know, there was a lot of things like this. So yes, it's crazy.
Last question from me before we start presenting some hardware to you. I wonder if you can talk about, as a young person watching films, falling in love with film. You've certainly, based on all the references that you've made about all the films that you've seen, you know, you are a student of film. What would you have made if we told you, you know, years ago that one night the 2 honorees at an event are going to be Justine Triet and Martin Scorsese?
Yes, I'm a little stressful. I would have been very, very stressful, but I would have laughed because j'aurais jamais cru ça, sorry.
I would never have believed it.
Yeah, this is crazy, and I'm super happy to meet him, yeah.
Well, that will happen in a moment, but first, please welcome back to the stage the Executive Director of the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, Roger Dirk.
First of all, Scott Feinberg, isn't he a rock star? Thank you, Scott. I have been aware of Justine Triet's work prior to this film, like her film Sybil. Before I saw her, I saw Anatomy of a Fall, and I knew she was talented, but nothing prepared me to the cerebral murder trial drama Anatomy of a Fall. Her filmmaking style has the precision of a Swiss watch, which recalls Hitchcock, which I found startling, the precision of the filmmaking, given that the film immerses us into so much ambiguity. When you watch the film, notice how filled of metaphors and symbols Anatomy of the Fall is. The first shot is a ball falling down the stairs, and that motif, the notion of falling, will recur throughout. In the house, characters are moving up and down the stairs. The film feels at times like a ghost story. Her courtroom sequences outdoes and redefines the cinematic courtroom dramas that us in the Western world have seen up until now. And any director who features a dog so prominently in their film steals my heart. Triet films find themselves on the boundary where fact and fiction blur into each other. She amplifies the fears and anxieties of contemporary women who attempt to balance a home life and a work life. The main character in Anatomy of a Fall wouldn't come under the attack she undergoes if she had been a man. It is the main character's intelligence, ambition, and mental fortitude that are ultimately on trial. There is something wrong with a society that questions the way women choose to live. What Justine does in her film is that she totally entertains us, but she puts a mirror out to us to think about the way that society treats us. When Anatomy of a Fall won the Palme d'Or, Triet became only the third woman to win that award. The first, of course, was Jane Campion for the piano in 1993. The second, Triet's countrywoman, Julia Ducournau, for Titan in 2021. Justine, I cannot wait to see what you do next. You're a remarkable director, an amazing voice, and thank you for having such a powerful, powerful voice. It is my honor to give you Outstanding Director at this year's
Sorry.
I'll move this stuff away.
I'm so super, super happy to be here. And yeah, thank you so much, Roger, for your words. Knowing all the talented directors who made films this year, the fact that you've chosen me to receive this award is incredibly moving. My life is to make films, and I try to do it as freely as possible. And I realize this freedom is a rare thing. This award encouraged me to preserve that and continue forward. Thank you all for that. Thank you all for that, yes, sorry. And thank you so much, Roger Derling. And by the way, I want to cast your dogs for my next movie. I found in love. Oh. Thank you so much.
Please join me in welcoming the Santa Barbara International Film Festival's Director of the Year, Martin Scorsese.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, what's happening?
Welcome, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Whoa. There you go. Now I see you. Wow. That's great. That's great.
Well, I want to start with a question that I hope you'll bear with me through, because it's a long wind-up, but I think there's a point.
Okay.
Okay. Because of Mean Streets, Goodfellas, Casino, Gangs of New York, The Departed, and The Irishman, you are very closely associated with the gangster genre. But you have also made films that are totally different, like The Age of Innocence, a period piece, costume drama, Hugo, a family film, what we might call your trilogy of films about faith, The Last Temptation of Christ, Kundun, and Silence. Isn't Killers of the Flower Moon, in a way, sort of an amalgam of everything you've done up to this point? It brings elements of all of these things into one film.
I think you're right, but I'm agreeing with you from this point looking back. I didn't think that it would be that way, but there was something that was so compelling about this story. It's more than one story, by the way. It's this whole catastrophic series of events that it was so compelling. I could not pull myself away from it. And by the way, the picture went, we started working on the script in 2017. And then we decided to do, it was between, I was going to do The Irishman and Killers of the Flower Moon, and we wanted to do Killers first at a certain point, around 2017, right around almost 2018. But we realized then that as De Niro looked at me and said, Marty, we're doing CGI for youthification. He said, if we wait another couple of years, I don't know any CGI is going to help. Between him and Al and Joe Pesci, I said, you're right. I know. Okay, we'll do Irishman first. So we did Irishman. Irishman was a period that took about 19. Bob and I, De Niro, were trying to do a film together again. But that almost was 19 years.
Wow. Yeah.
So, and it became The Irishman ultimately, which was a kind of summing up on another level. But there was, during that period of Irishman, and then the editing of Irishman and the working on the script of Killers of the Flower Moon, and then visiting Oklahoma twice and visiting the Osage Nation out there, beginning to realize that there was much more to the story than, and I don't mean to be derogatory, but simply a police procedural, where these, in effect, police come in and find out who did it. And what we said, when I read the stuff and when I met the people, I said, it isn't a matter of who did it, who didn't do it. Who didn't? And like the complicity of even average people. And I said, how did this happen? And then you begin to think of other periods of time in history, and in the 20th century, particularly in the 20s and 30s in Germany, and how this kind of thing could build almost incrementally. I'm not talking about I'm talking about the average person. And that is what got to me. And then I realized, when I realized that the story was about the taking lives of some of the Osage Native Americans for their oil. Okay, and they found ways to do it. And the place out there, was a very, especially 100 years ago, those prairies and those places, you could do anything, nobody would know. So you'd say, well, so-and-so died, he was drunk or something, then there must have been bad liquor. It turns out that the liquor, too, was interesting because it was a dry state before Prohibition. I think it was the old story of, check your guns at the door. Like Wyatt Earp did in Dodge City. There's a reason why he had them check their guns going into a saloon. And so, it's a very, very different world. And so ultimately, we had a couple of meetings with the Osage, and one of them was a very big one, actually, a dinner that was given at Grey Horse, which was one of the 3 districts. They have Pawhuska, Grey Horse, and Hominy. And we had to go to Grey Horse because a lot of the people in the story, their families came from Grey Horse. The victims came from Grey Horse. And a number of people, it was supposed to be a few people there, but there were like 250. And it was like a school auditorium of some kind. And they were all in beautiful clothes, and it was a traditional meal. And then people got up and started speaking. And when they started speaking, it was, you know, we were still working on the script in terms of the Bureau of Investigation coming in and trying to find out what's going on. But when I heard the Osage speak, and when I began to hang around with them a little at dinner, and I began to realize, and I always said that somehow this tragedy, this catastrophe had a face, and it changed. And a woman, I remember, I think it was Brandy Lemon, she got up and she said, you know, people were concerned, they had some apprehension because of some of the titles of the films you mentioned, that they were concerned I'd be more interested in portraying the violence in the story. And she said, but then I saw a movie that he made called Silence. And I tell you, there's another element there, and I trust this. And then Margie Burkhardt got up, and Margie is the granddaughter of Ernest and Molly in reality. And she talked about, you know, it isn't as simple as villains and victims. It just isn't. And that's what was getting me in the story. I mean, David Grant's book is great. It's just that it was coming from the white European point of view. She said, it isn't as simple as victims and villains. She says, you have to understand one thing and remember that Molly and Ernest were in love. And that's when I realized that all these elements were interweaving, and maybe knowing and understanding, in a sense, the mind of the thief, let's say, you know, like in Goodfellas, where they want to rob everything they see, and just things they don't need to rob, just the enjoyment of robbing, you know. So here's the oil, and in order to get that, they have to eliminate some people, even though they may be their best friends. And that was the other thing. Another guy told me, he was kind of had been impatient with us. He said, you don't understand. He said, Bill Hale and Henry Rohn, the guy who shot in the back of the head, he said, they were best friends. And I realized, oh, so this is something really, and so it seemed that I was becoming more and more comfortable with the Osage themselves. And also, I really understood more. I understood simply the criminal mind, you know, as they say in that terrific film, The Asphalt Jungle, John Huston directed, as a W.R. Burnett script, I think. And it was Louis Calhern who plays a crooked lawyer, and very elegantly. And his wife says, all your clients are just horrible people. They're criminals. How do you deal with them? How could you make a life like that? And he says, well, people have to understand that a crime is just a left-hand form of endeavor.
Well,
I'm not saying it is, but that's the quote.
right.
And I said, that's the way they think. I said, yeah, this is the lawyer who's even more crooked than his clients.
Well, I want to note, speaking of your initial outreach to Osage Nation, about a month ago, I had the opportunity to spend a day with Chief Standing Bear, the chief of Osage Nation, and this is not in front of an audience, not in front of anything, and it was, so from the heart, could not have been more appreciative of the fact that throughout the whole process, you guys were working with them, incorporating their community into the filmmaking process. Many of the people we see in the film are from Osage Nation, and so that's a real testament to you. I want to also, though, come back to a kind of a sort of offshoot of what we were just talking about. The Guardian, I want to read this. This was a quote from a few years ago, but I think it's interesting. quote, "There's a perennial fascination in the films of Martin Scorsese with the notion of power, the structures of it, the layers of it, the flow of it. But it's not so much the individual at the top of the ladder who seems to intrigue the director, but rather those a couple of rungs down." And when I think about Mean Streets, when I think about Goodfellas, when I think about Ernest in Killers of the Flower Moon, it is true, right? So how do you explain that? I mean, I know part of it may go back to growing up in Little Italy around people like this, right?
Well, I did, and to be strict about it, I mean, I'll tell you that I first grew up to my first 6-7 years in a little, it's almost like a suburb in Queens, New York, Corona it was called. And it was I was growing up, they had trees, it was wonderful. But then my father got into a fight with the landlord, and you know, they were working class people. My father would work in the garment district pressing women's garments. My mother would go to the garment district and work on sewing machines. And they had gotten their jobs during the Depression. And the garment district was controlled by a lot of wise guys. And, you know, in a sense, I saw my father and a number of other family members trying to live a decent life, but under the control of organized crime figures who don't come on like, you know, Mike Mazurki and Farewell My Lovely. I mean, some of your friends, you know what I'm saying? So it's a very interesting thing. And you still want to live a good life, meaning a morally good life, but how do you do it under these circumstances where you have no power, very little power? So the landlord was backed by one group, my father was backed by another, and we lost. And we were pushed back to Elizabeth Street, downtown New York, to the building and the apartment that my father was born in 1913, where my grandparents were still living. And the change from this little community, Corona, which is now all Indian. All Indians are there. It's a whole, become an enclave of Indian. The change was shocking. Suddenly I was thrown in, the streets were teeming with people like a Bruegel painting, with butchers coming out with half carcasses and throwing them on the people running, the kids playing with garbage pails, and in the wise guys in the corner, they were fine. It was everybody else. It was terrifying because you go near the groceries or all the groceries out in the street. Get away from there, you kids. You know, that kind of stuff. Your mother wants this. Go give it to her. You know, people yelling out the windows. I mean, it was really a shock. You know?
I just want to insert here that it may not be a coincidence that the way you were observing a lot of this was through a window, the shape of a frame of film.
Frame of film, but also high angle.
Because you were.
I was high angle down, man. I'm telling you, yeah.
And the reason, though, you were up in that window, you were.
I was sick all the time.
Yeah.
I had asthma, and I was busted. Basically, I could not. They led me to believe. I mean, I knew it was real. I could feel it. I got it when I was 3 years old, so I could feel that you can't breathe, the wheezing. I knew it, but the doctors at that time told my parents he can't do any sports, he can't run, and also, children get spasmodic laughter. Well, that would cause the asthma, and so you couldn't even do that. So, I mean, of course I had to, and I get sick. Not sick. You gasp for breath, and so they were very afraid that I was sick all the time, and I was. Between that and an extraordinary amount of allergic reactions to everything. And so they protected me, and I was by myself a lot.
You became a keen observer of
An
others.
observer, you're right.
Yeah.
But you're right about the world I saw was influenced by the power that I never quite found. I can never see it really. You never know that man or that woman had all the power. They were in the really powerful wise guys, like in Raging Bull. Let's say there's a few, and some in Goodfellas. They're not the loud ones. There was some kind of an older guy in the corner having an espresso, and people would go by and he'd nod or whatever. That's it. And so I found that I can never find who was the power. But I knew it was there, and I saw people react accordingly. And the same the way Ernest or any of them reacted.
Now, there aren't many people around who shared the same upbringing, the same experience that you did, but one of them is somebody who you reconnected with many years later, and I want to ask you to talk about how you wound up first working with Robert De Niro, who you have now made 10 films with through Killers, we'll just say. Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, New York, New York, Raging Bull, King of Comedy, Goodfellas, Cape Fear, Casino, Irishman, and Killers. Can you share how you first met and then how you re-met, and why you guys you bring out the best in each other?
Well, I must say, he was with a group of young guys that were kind of based in Kenmare Street in a place called the Alto Knights. Members only. Somebody asked, how do you become a member? I said, you don't.
This is when you're how old, each of you?
15 or 16.
15.
And he was a nice kid, I remember. The guys around him were little tough guys, I must say. They were. I was 2 blocks down towards Houston Street. And I was with a different group of people. And we would kind of meet now and then, but we always remembered him as Bobby, a nice kid, Bobby. One night there was a big fight at the Webster Hall dance. And we put that in Raging Bull, by the way, the dance hall, Webster Hall. There was a fight amongst the people that were there, and I remember a number of people got hurt. I think he got hit, and we were all very sad about that. But he was fine. It was just that it just came out of the blue, and things erupted, you know. And so I've always remembered that, you know, Bobby, right? So years go by, I do what I have to do, and he went off and did his stuff. Brian De Palma made a film called Hi Mom. He did first Greetings, and the sequel was Hi Mom. And Hi Mom has Bob De Niro in it. And so he said, you know, he should really meet Marty, you know. And my friend Jay Cox and Verna Bloom had a dinner, I think it was Christmas, and must have been 1969. And they invited him and me, and after dinner, he was very quiet, and after dinner, we were sitting in a little room, it was a tenement, and he looked at me and he said, you used to hang out with Curdy, right? I said, yeah. He said, Joey Morale? I said, yeah. Nicky the Hat? I said, uh-huh. He said, Frankie Aquilino? I said, yeah. He said, I'm Bobby. I said, you're kidding. I said, no. I said, my God, that's amazing. And that's how we reconnected.
And you put him in what was your most autobiographical film yet,
Mean Streets. Mean Streets, yeah.
And then since that, I think you said it was really that relationship was cemented on Taxi Driver.
That connected. I mean, it was a natural Mean Streets. He was more interested in playing the Keitel part at first, but I said no. For him, I felt because he really knew the people it was based upon. You see, and he knew their moves, he knew the hat, he knew. I said, you know, this is perfect for you, and he did it. And we formed in a funny way, his sensitivity, I learned a lot from his sensitivity. I never took any acting classes, so I don't know about method or any of that, but his sensitivity taught me a lot. And I began to find my way around that and through him, you know, and I learned from him. And I also began to trust him. He had really good instincts, but not just about street, you know, the street guys and street situations, about human nature and about psychology. And often he wasn't able to express it, but he'd say, I'd like to show you something. And he would. And I'd say, that's really interesting. Well, what if it goes this way? And he said, well, that'll be interesting. So we began to find a trust. And it really culminated in Taxi Driver. And that was a perfect combination of the script by Paul Schrader, him and the lead, and me working on it. And for example, the great thing he does in front of the mirror, you talking to me. was something that by the last couple of days of shooting, we were over schedule, and the studio was very angry, and they were pounding us, and we were moving like mad. It was a tough shoot during the summer in New York in 1975, and 1975 in New York was bad, you know. But for me, it was New York. I come from, I don't know, no difference, you know. So other people say, oh, this is horrible. So what? What are you talking about? Look at the garbage. I said, no, it's a garbage strike. Don't worry. So they'll pick it up sometime. So I'm not kidding. And they say, Marty, this place is terrible. So, no. Anyway, we're shooting, and we're in the apartment on Columbus Avenue, 89th Street. There was a condemned building we were shooting in, and they were going to tear the building down. And my AD, who was a really great New York AD, this guy was quite something, and Pete Scopa, his name was. And it was the last few days of shooting, and there was a scene in front of the mirror, and he was playing with his gun, you know, and this sort of thing, and playing and like imagining like a kid playing with it. In those days, they used to have toy guns for cowboy things, and used to be a kid and play with those. And I said, I think you should say something, you know, for the scene with the mirror. So he called Paul, and Paul said, I don't know, you know, he talked a little bit to him, and we discussed it. And we really couldn't come up with anything much. So he started making moves. And I was at his feet in front of him. And the sound you hear outside, bongo drums and things like that, conga, that's all from the street. That's all real. Don't forget there was no video assist then, so you didn't know what you were getting. It was really up to you had to really trust the camera operator, seeing through the eyepiece. And so he began to say, are you talking to me? And then started repeating it, and I said, yeah, that's good, and kept repeating it, and at that, one of the takes, the AD started pounding on the door. We had locked the door. I said, we gotta go, we gotta shoot, come on, they're gonna kill us. I said, no, this is really good, give me 2 minutes, this is really good. And sure enough, that's how we finally completed that. We squeezed it in.
That's great.
But it's that kind of trust, because I saw where he was going.
That's great.
You know, we just pushed.
Now, your other muse, great collaborator, is Leonardo DiCaprio, who the amazing, two amazing facts that I'll turn this over to you in a second, but the way you came to work with Leonardo DiCaprio 22 years ago, starting with Gangs of New York, and then continuing through, let me just give our rundown here, because it's incredible. We have, sorry, just a second. Gangs of New York, The Aviator, Shutter Island, The Wolf of Wall Street, and now Killers of the Flower Moon. The way you came to work with him was because your other guy, De Niro, recommended him, which he'd never done to anyone.
He was always very quiet, Bob, and he didn't like to do interviews, and very often he would ask me to go with him, and I do a lot of the talking. He'd throw the questions to me, and but he always shied away from that. He was very private and very internal, and he was working with Coppola, with Bertolucci, with some of the greatest people in the world, Cimino. I mean, so you know, he was very private and never said to me anything about other actors or whether he had a problem with them or whether he liked them or not. But I think it was back, 25 years ago, we were talking on the phone about trying to do something, and he said, hey, I just finished this film, This Boy's Life, and there's this kid, a 16-year-old kid, Leo DiCaprio, and I think you got to meet this kid, he's really interesting. So I'll set it up someday. I said, good. And that was it. I think I met him at a party somewhere, that was it. And then it all came together in Gangs of New York with Mike Ovitz and bringing in Leo, because Leo liked the films that I made with Bob and wanted to do anything I wanted to do. And so that's how it all came together.
And I should know, I left off The Departed somehow, which is idiotic.
Yeah,
tells you how many great films that I can't even, you forget The Departed for a second. But, and so Killers of the Flower Moon is the first time since This Boy's Life that these guys are together. First time for you that your two great muses are together in a film. And I guess that raises the obvious question, do they work similarly or differently?
Well, it's a twofold answer, because one thing is that, there's 30 years difference between Leo and myself and Bob. And so what we may have done back in 1972 or 80, we don't do that anymore. We may have meetings, they're not meetings, we meet or we have a coffee or whatever, we're talking. We talk mainly about personal things. Then every now and then we talk about the script and, the project. And then we really get into it, and then we pull back again. And it goes like that. And so we found that even to the point where Robert De Niro, with me at least, would at times just react to something, and I'd say, what do you think? And I see you moving away, and say, this is not right. And we didn't have to say what's right or wrong. I said, yeah, I know, I feel the same thing. I said, but, is it because this means that, or is it because he's too angry here, or should he be quieter? Do you think if they start yelling, it's going to be too corny? But unless he said, no, other times I've said that, he said, no, trust me, I think I can make that work. I said, fine, And so with Leo, though, it's very different. And Leo, but what I'm getting at is that, before I say what Leo, what his process is, De Niro's mind now has become quite internal and quiet. I guess we're just old. You get enough, we've seen it, we heard it. And your kids are running around saying things, I know. If I'm going to tell you in 10 years you're going to think differently, you're not going to believe me. So, believe me, I've been there, I know. So in the sense that Leo is very effusive and really has such great energy. There's just no way. I remember I was on the stage 15, 16 years ago saying this. He gave me a second life making movies. He made me get excited again about, walking on those sets with those giant, machines and giant trucks outside, and the studio angry and yelling at us. Most of the time, not lately, thank God. Thank God Apple has been the best of all, really. They're amazing.
Wow.
Great support. So Leo still needs that talking, and we talk it through and talk it through and talk it through and talk it through until we come all the way around. Sometimes it takes several months. Well, that's what it is. And Bob, in this one, it became very, the way you see him as Uncle Bill. He'd be sitting there and reading. We call it not a rehearsal, just reading maybe. And I said, maybe too much in that line, huh, Bob? What do you think? Is it he's saying too much? I said, yeah, I'm saying too much here. Well, I don't need this word. No, let's take that out. Let's do that. And then Leo will want to say more. And then we look at him and say, well, all right, but I think you're going to find that we're going to take it. But eventually, the payoff on that for us is the last scene in the movie between the two of them in the jail. That scene took, I'd say, 4 to 5 months to write, because we eliminated everything else. And we kept doing different versions on weekends, different versions. And the first version was that they attack each other and they fight us. I'm not going to do it. I said, it's beyond fighting. So then what is it? What exactly is it? And we finally, it was like fine painting in a way. It was like miniature painting, where we eliminated everything until finally he just had to face him and say, I'm going to testify. And then I wrote the rest of the lines for Bob about, people are going to forget and all that. And then Bob, I think he added, I love you, son. I love you.
Oh, that's great. And I know the person,
They're great. They're great together.
Beautiful. I would be remiss if I did not note that there is a third great, long-lasting collaboration for you, and that is someone who you make a lot of these crucial decisions alongside your film editor since 1980 with Raging Bull, through Killers of the Flower Moon, Thelma Schoonmaker. When we've previously spoken, you have said that you love being in the editing room as much as anything. You've got Turner Classic Movies going on in the background. Just as the second to last question, can you just talk about that? Because that collaboration, that is...
We knew each other in '63 and '64. She was not, you see, she's not a... She doesn't come from film school. We met in the film school for but it was only a 6-week workshop that she was attending. She was at Columbia, I think, and political science. One of her teachers, one of her professors was Nabokov. I mean, you know, we're talking about somebody who wasn't really a film buff in a way. And so she always stayed that way outside of the very machine of the filmmaking community, so that it would be a kind of almost very open and honest reaction to, oh, that doesn't seem right, or that, you know, but wait, that's so-and-so, we have to do it this way because they want that in the film. No, it doesn't seem right. So there's a sense of not being affected by how other films are being made, and also not being affected by trends in the industry. She works for me only, and only because we know each other so long. I mean, those first 10 years, no, we didn't work together. I did Mean Streets and Alice and Taxi Driver and New York, and Last Waltz. We didn't work together on those. But when I did Raging Bull, I felt that I needed, the editor I had been working with had left. And one of the problems I had in Hollywood at that time was the fact that I was working around editors who were real pros, really terrific. One of them edited the "You're Talking to Me" scene, Tom Rolfe. He came in and edited that in one morning. And when I walked in and looked at it, I said, "Don't touch it," because normally I'm with the editor for everything. I said, "That is perfect," you know. But I also started as an editor, so they weren't very friendly about directors, especially these guys coming in from New York or wherever, who wanted to hang out in the editing room and tell you where to cut and do this and do that. So I had lost the people I was working with, and I said, let me call my old friend, see what she's doing. She was in Pittsburgh doing something on television, and I said, come and do this film with me. And she said, I never did a feature. I said, well, we'll do it. I'll show you. And so was Raging Bull. She wins the Oscar for it. It's amazing.
It's great.
And the other thing about her is that you got to understand that that a lot of the films during those years, they weren't easy to make. Of course, none is easy to make. But what I mean by that is there was a lot of resistance sometimes with studios, and the film could be taken away from you, and the editor has to stay with the studio, and the editor has to cut what the studio says. She would never do that.
Right.
I could trust her. If I leave, if I'm forced out, she'd be out.
Right.
You follow?
Yeah, totally. Now, last question. This last May at the Cannes Film Festival, Killers of the Flower Moon premiered. And I had the opportunity to do an interview with somebody with the last name Scorsese who had a film at the festival, but that was not you. That was your daughter, Francesca, who had a film there. And has the genes, it seems, to follow in your great footsteps. And I just wonder, when you look at your, impact, that's the, sort of the a personal legacy is, what she's starting to do, and it's wonderful. But also when you look at films generally, and you today survey the landscape, where do you most see the influence of your work? Because I think it's all over the place, but I wonder what you notice.
I can't really tell. I mean, I could say certain angles, or certain shots, or certain Steadicam shots, let's say, are reminiscent of Goodfellas, or reminiscent of Casino. Some stuff even later on, Kundun. But I feel it when I see certain films, or television shows, or films that are made for TV, like limited series or what. I feel it, but I can't specifically point to it and say that is, oh, that's directly from this, or that was taken from here. And if it is, at times, it's done more like a homage.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of fun. You know, people pointed out to me and say, watch what they do here. That's homage to your pictures. But it's been so long, and I've seen so much stuff that I can't quite tell, you know? And so for me, it's an honor. You know?
Well, I think it's everywhere, and that is a testament to how much you mean to all of the filmmakers who have followed. So,
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. And now I am going to bring back out to close the evening the executive director of the film festival, Roger Durling.
Thank you. Oh, and once again, Scott, amazing moderation. Thank you for doing this. I have a question to those in the audience. The film lovers in the audience, I cannot think of anything more beautiful than listening to the rat-tat-tat cadence of Martin Scorsese. Isn't it? For days, I have been stressed out about coming out and talking to you guys, because what do you say to the world's greatest living filmmaker that he hasn't heard before? As a devout film lover, all I can say that I have always felt blessed to have lived at the same time that Martin Scorsese was making movies. Nothing has brought me more joy to know that every few years I will get to experience the release of a new Scorsese film. Every vicissitude, every change in the world that stressed me out, I can always count on the brilliance of a new Martin Scorsese film to make things better. Growing up in Panama, I was born in '63, and growing up in Panama as a young boy, I was able to convince my parents to take me to see films that some may consider advanced for a 10-year-old. But there I was in a humid movie house without air conditioning in 1973, watching Mean Streets and discovering the mind and artistry of Scorsese. I may not have understood everything that was happening, but there was so much joy in seeing what cinema was able to do and the brilliance of cinema. 3 years later, here comes Taxi Driver, and I went 5 days in a row to see Taxi Driver. And it was the best crash course in cinema I have ever had. Deconstructing and watching Travis Bickle, perhaps the most famous outcast on the big screen. Later I run and see Raging Bull and Goodfellas. By this time, I knew him simply as Scorsese. He was and remains the first director that I simply knew by his last name. More work to come, always exhilarating, always challenging, and especially the films that challenge my faith, like Last Temptation of Christ, Doom, and Silence, and always with terrific performances. Think Jodie Foster, Harvey Keitel, Lorraine Bracco, Ray Liotta, Daniel Day-Lewis, and many, many others. And his remarkable partnership with Robert De Niro, who became Marty's screen alter ego, and then forging another equally thrilling partnership with Leo DiCaprio. Has there ever been a director with not one, but two powerful muses? I can't think of another one. At 81 years of age, when other artists are hanging up their gloves, he's still giving us gifts and film to cherish. Did you guys see his Super Bowl commercial? Only thing to me that is disappointing is that he's only won one Oscar. He's been nominated a record 10 times for Best Director, and he's only won once for The Departed. Can we rectify that, please? Please, Marty, I can't believe that I'm actually saying in front of you, Marty. You're Scorsese. Please keep making films for the fulfillment and nourishment to all of us, because our lives depend on it. It is my great honor to hand you this token of gratitude. Outstanding Director of the Year, according to us.
Thank you so much. Oh, thank you, Roger. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Thank you so much. What a beautiful, beautiful speech. Beautiful speech. Yeah. Thank you so much. You know, I've been coming to this festival for so many years now, and I remember Leo DiCaprio and we did something here, and we got yeah. Wolf of Wall Street, and we had a great time. I thank you. I enjoy being in Santa Barbara at the festival as many times as I can. Last time I think was Irishman. We were here, yeah, and with Al and Bob. You know, I have to thank the festival, and I have to thank Roger, and thank you, Scott. And your warmth, the audience, the warmth of this audience is wonderful. You know, you mentioned the 10 nominations and winning only one. I always felt once, you know, we did Taxi Driver, and 75 was released in 76, but the film was nominated, and it got 3 other nominations, but the director and the writer were not nominated. So apparently it was made by itself somehow. Once that happened, I realized, you know, it doesn't matter, because ultimately the real gift was getting to make the films. You got to think of that. Yeah. It was amazing. It was amazing to have made these films, and that system keeps changing. It changes every day, and then every 10 years it becomes a whole new world. And yet, I was always able to find a way to make pictures not only for the enjoyment just of making films, but also as experiments, in a sense, like Cape Fear and even The Aviator to a certain extent. But films that I really wanted to make, that I was burning to make, like Gangs of New York and Temptation of Christ and Silence and Goodfellas and stuff like that. So as much fun as it would be to receive those things, it's always best for younger people to remember it's really the work. That's all it is. So I want to thank you. Thank you so much. This has been great.
Let's bring out Justine Triet. Don't go, Marty. Let's just bring it and take a photo. If you don't mind taking center stage.